All right, we're on chapter 5 in The Art of Neighboring by Pathak and Dave Runyon. And chapter 5 is called Moving Down the Line. How do we get started taking the next step to love our neighbors? How do we do that? Well, let me share you a quick story. When we moved to Morgantown, we had a minivan and we got a flat tire while it was parked at our apartment complex. It was kind of convenient while inconvenient at the same time. Well, I spent a good couple hours attempting to lower the spare tire from underneath the back of the minivan, but had a lot of trouble because some of the pieces were rusted to the degree that you couldn't move the parts to allow the tire to lower. So while I'm down there under the car, underneath the minivan, and messing with it and have some tools out, a pickup truck drives by. And I recognize there's people that live right next to us that we hadn't really fully met quite yet, being new to the neighborhood. And the guy parked and got out of his car, and he just decided to be a good neighbor and step out of his way. And when he could have just gone straight inside and pretended like he didn't see anything, and go inside and see his family and eat some food or whatever he was going to do, he walks around. He walked around the van and said, "Hey, what you doing?" Long story short, he helped me fix the van. He helped me remove that spare tire so that we could go get a new tire fixed. This began what was a longer term relationship with a lot of good spiritual conversations with he and his wife and his kids. So that is how you get started. But let's back up. Knowing where to start is sometimes the hardest step. We can spend forever giving the right answers and talking about this stuff, right? And we reach this point, this place where actually beginning to do it, those first steps, can be very difficult. Initially, getting to know people in your mission focus group as a community group can feel awkward. Taking the first step to plan a micro mission can be awkward to do. And it will be often for the people in your community group to do that. But connecting with people and building friendships and making disciples can actually become fairly natural over time as you begin to do it. You might be surprised. Have you learned any names in your neighborhood yet? We've talked a little bit about that in past chapters. Maybe just getting to know the names of people that live around you. Or have you been able to fill in some of the blanks a little bit more about them, things that you would only know about them by interacting with them? So you have a means of deepening those relationships. If not, and if we're at this point and you haven't, consider going on a walk sometime this week. Put it on the calendar, and just see who you can say hi to. Making their names a priority is an essential first step. As your group goes on plans a micro mission, not just going to serve people, but to make disciples, which means we've got to actually get to know some people. We've got to learn their names. Learning their names has got to be a priority. Go out of your way to learn people's names and to figure out what those are so that you can begin to pray for them as a family at home. You can pray for your neighbors. You can pray for your community group focus group, your mission focus group as a group by name whenever you gather. If you've forgotten their names, that's okay. Go up to them when you see them again. Say, "Hey, we've talked a bunch of times, and for the life of me, I don't feel like I've done a good job of learning your name." Just admit that you've failed and learn their name. At least they'll know that you care about them. Are there people that your community group has met on a micro mission? Can you learn their names and begin to pray for them together? Consider Then going to the next step, and maybe, especially in a neighborhood setting, this is maybe a good idea. Coming up with some means of communication in your neighborhood. Maybe building a block directory, like literally going around and knocking on some people's doors, the people that live around you, and just like, hey, we want to be able to communicate with each other and look out for each other and interact and so just getting like a phone number, or email address, those sort of things. Maybe create a Facebook group for some of your neighbors. There's other online tools as well that I could share with you in person. Simple tools to begin communicating, looking out for each other, planning little get-togethers, impromptu things, or kids' birthday parties. It helps to be able to cultivate new relationships and take them deeper. Looking for opportunities to make disciples and bless people. Remember, Jesus did not command us to simply make acquaintances or even simply friends. He commanded us to love our neighbors. That's important, which includes investing in some relationships. And secondly, to make disciples. That's what we're after. One good starting point for fostering deeper conversations is to, after you maybe make a neighborhood directory to share with those neighbors, then maybe planning something like a block party, something that takes a little more initiative and planning. And plan it together with your neighbors. Don't just plan it separate from them, but allow them, they want to bring a dish of food too. They want to be a part of it. People then can move from being neighbors to being friends. Those kind of events are very helpful. Gospel conversations can more easily flow from these kind of events. These are like launching points with people. They do make a difference. We've noticed that ourselves. If you have a Bible, Luke chapter 5, I should have had mine open, and I didn't. Luke chapter 5, verse 27. Says this. After this, Jesus went out, and saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And leaving everything, he rose and followed him. We're going to go a little further, all the way to verse 32. Verse 29 says, "And Levi made him a great feast in his house, and there was a large company of tax collectors and others reclining at table with them. And the Pharisees and their scribes grumbled at his disciples, saying, 'Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?' And Jesus answered them, 'Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.'" Notice the setting. Where is Jesus? Jesus is at a social event, and he was invited by a sinner. Maybe in your neighborhood, a neighbor that other neighbors don't like, or that they are suspicious of. When you as a Christian attend a get-together with friends, with neighbors, with people in your community group's mission focus, God is handing you an opportunity to be like Jesus is in that Luke 5 passage, and to begin some gospel conversations, and to begin to go deeper in those relationships. Celebrations and social events are not a waste of your time. When it comes to being God's people on mission, they are significant. So let's review. If you're in a neighborhood, a real literal neighborhood, very helpful to make a block map, a block directory perhaps. Something of that nature, some way to meet and get to know and build a communication network with your neighbors, and then to plan some kind of event. What if you sought to throw a fun event with the people you are seeking to make disciples of, even with your community group? Even if that's not a literal neighborhood, what if you sought to throw a fun event? How could such an event help you and your community group to actually make disciples and love your neighbors. And if making disciples and loving our neighbors are vitally important priorities to Jesus, then how can your life and the lives of the people in your community group, how can you help them to more naturally live in those rhythms in all of life? Like, do you watch football? And maybe you don't, but if you do, what if you watched a game sometime with some neighbors? Do your kids ever play outside? And what if you joined them and got to know some neighbors at the same time? Not complicated. Making a big splash, remember, is not the key to making big impact. Neither of those are our goals. Rather, it's faithfulness to God in the seemingly insignificant ways that God is pleased to use to make an impact for his glory. That's what we're after. Long, slow, fun, faithful. We'll see you next chapter 6.